Hello and welcome to another video that will go over how to install Windows with WSL. This is basically how I typically like to set up my WSL instances to get a full Ubuntu LTS version running and all the different kind of tools I like to run during a kind of an initial setup. That should cover most everybody's cases. To get going, I usually like to start off with this Microsoft article. It is the WSL installation, and the main thing to take from this is you need to open up a PowerShell in administrator mode. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I come here, I search for PowerShell, and then I go over down to Run as Administrator and click Go and hit Yes, and I'll have a new prompt up. And then all you really have to do to get it going to get the WSL, and when we're on version 2, is WSL install. And they've defaulted version 2. They've defaulted Ubuntu to be the one that gets installed. This will take care of essentially everything for you if you hit enter. Since I've already done it, it's not going to run the same for me. But the WSL command is one that's pretty interesting. It shows you a lot of information. If you do WSL help, you can get a lot of options, but the main ones are I could do WSL list, and it lists the different WSL instances I have going. So I actually have 2 running right now. I've got my main one that I like to use, my default one, Ubuntu 22.04. And then I created a second one called, just for this video Ubuntu, which is still 22.04, but I gave it a different name just so we can have a fresh start to go with. So after that, the next thing I like to do is I like to install the Windows terminal command, Windows terminal, and it's a new kind of multi-tab terminal emulator developed by Microsoft. It's a really nice tool, and so I like to use that one instead of like a PuTTY or some other type of thing on Windows. Another one that's pretty good is called Tabby, but for this demonstration we'll use Microsoft Windows Terminal. So I already have it installed. There's probably installation instructions right here. Just probably click that button and it'll probably just install it for you. Looks like it brings you to the Microsoft Store. Just hit download, install. But I'll just look for it. So I'll run the terminal app. And here it is right here. By default, it opens up. I've got it going into my Ubuntu. But if you click the down arrow, you can see the kind of the different ones. You can launch a PowerShell. You can launch a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of great settings that you can come in here. And so here's where you can choose your default one that you want to run. You can change your appearance so it has, you know, a dark theme or whatnot. A lot of cool stuff there, color schemes. And then I usually like to set up some different button combinations that I like to be able to split screen. So for example, I can split this thing horizontally with my Control-Shift-D. And so that's split horizontally. I can hit Control-Shift-E to split vertical. I can use the Alt keys to tab between different areas. I go up and down and left and right and all that stuff. You can type exit to get out of them. So I like being able to do that. But for now, we're going to come down here and we're going to launch Video Ubuntu. And this will basically be what it looks like when after you've done doing the WSL install. You'll be brought into it. You'll be brought into like a home folder with your name, and it shows your computer name there and all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do here is, by default, if I do an echo of shell, you'll see that we're using the bash shell for Linux, and that's okay, but it's really an old shell. It doesn't have any like fancy bells and whistles. For example, if I try to do, let's see, LL, well, it has the LL in there, but basically LS, there's no folders in here. But if I go back to the root, for example, whoops, cd / and I do an ls, I can see folders in there. And if I try to tab, I can hit tab. Like if I start spelling it, you know, and I forget it right, I can hit tab and it auto completes. If there's more than one choice, I can double hit tab, but if I screw up and do like a capital M and hit tab, it's just going to beep at me and not ever complete it. Whereas if we go to something more modern like ZSH, if you can't find anything, it'll kind of list them down below, and you can use the keys. You'll see it in just a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to install ZSH as the default shell. So install ZSH Ubuntu, and we'll just go to the first article, and we'll kind of skip down here and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to use apt install in Ubuntu to kind of get it going. And so I'm just going to run this command. Well, actually, the very first thing you should do before I get into that is you should do a sudo apt get update, and that will then type in your password that you set up, and that will go and get all the latest packages and what's available and all that stuff. And then the next one you should do is upgrade, and this will go and install all the latest stuff for this, because maybe when they compiled Ubuntu, it didn't, it was a few weeks old and stuff, and so now you're getting all the latest and greatest. So I'm done there, but now I'm going to install ZSH, and we'll do that. And now you can just type ZSH, and this is a new ZSH config, blah 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 blah. You're seeing this message because you have no startup files. And so the main thing is it's trying to look for this .zshrc. We're gonna be creating that in a second, and we'll just kind of continue, but we'll get here first. So we'll just say quit and do nothing. So now I'm in ZSH, and it's doesn't look as fancy, doesn't have any colors because we just don't have stuff set up, but we're gonna get there in a second. But if you'll see here, if I type media, that's great. If I type, capital media, it still doesn't look that great, and because we need to install something called OhmyZSH. But first, we need to make sure that if I close my window and if I open back up here, you can see there it went right back to Bash and stuff. And so we're gonna set up it as the default terminal. Let's just see here. Enable syntax highlighting, all that kind of fun stuff. Default shell. We're gonna get back there. So so basically Ubuntu set ZSH as default shell, and okay, it's right here. So we'll just do this. We'll copy that, and we're going to go back here, and I'm going to say that, and type in my password. And now if I exit this and come back here and do that, you can see I get back to that warning error. So next we're going to install OhmyZSH, which is something that makes ZSH even more awesome. You can see I kind of have here, well, OhmyZSH. We'll just Google for it, and here we come here, and we're just going to skip down to the install, and we're just going to blindly copy this line of code and paste it in because that's safe. All right, so we have this, and if you look at it, it's going to create this ZSH file. So you can use whatever terminal editor you're used to looking at it. So I'll just use like nano.zshrc, and you can see lots of stuff in here. It's got a theme. There's plenty of themes you can change with to change your colors and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of good stuff. The big thing right here is this plugins, and we're gonna get to that in a second, but there's so many good plugins that you can install in ZSH and make your terminal better for you. So now if I exit this, and if I go back to that demo where I was trying to see all these different folders, if I type media capital M, you can see it just actually replaced the M down to lowercase. If I hit tab twice, I can actually use my cursor keys to kind of get around here now, and hit enter and enter again and do all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go back to my root folder, and we're going to get our SSH keys kind of set up. And so a lot of times you're going to use your SSH keys to get into your Git repos and GitHub, GitLab, all that kind of stuff. So I like to create my SSH key using the ED25519 encryption. Generate. The reason why is because it's a lot shorter when we look at the public key, and so but it's just as strong or even more strong cryptographically as RSA. It's faster, it's more secure, collision resilient, keys are smaller, so you have to copy and paste less. So essentially we're going to do that, and so we're going to copy this, and I'm going to come to here. And so if you notice, if we're in our root folder, if you just type cd enter and you see that little tilde in your root folder, you can type pwd and see your location. And if we look in here, and I'm using these little shortcut commands, so like ls is a typical listing folder. That's the thing that lists all your files in your folder. But if you notice, I just type ls and I see nothing. So there's a whole bunch of other options, like ls-a would tell me all the files. Basically any file that begins with a period is kind of hidden. I can type ls-al and I can get in a vertical listing format. I can type ls-alh and h and get a summary. Instead of seeing this is this exact many bytes, now I get, oh, it's 115K instead of it being exactly that. So anyways, so if you type alias, you can see a whole bunch of different shortcut commands, and there's a bunch of git commands that are shortcutted, but down here there's these alias commands for the ls and la. So I'm just going to type la and see that, but notice there is no .ssh folder, and we're going to create that by running this next command. So I'm going to say ssh keygen, and then I'm going to put my email in here, so like just Josh, and I'll say video test. You should ideally use a real email address, but for this demo I won't. I'll hit enter, and it says, hey, which file do you want to create it in? That should be fine. It says, do you want to type a passphrase in? This will be something you'd have to type in every single time that you were to open up your terminal shell and were to use your SSH key. For now, I'm just going to skip it. Hit enter, and there's your little cryptographic random art hash to know that you got something unique. Again, if I type LA now, I can see that it has a .sh folder. The big thing here to notice is the permissions on it. The permissions are going to be very restrictive, so it's really only the owner, Josh H., not the group, has read, write, execute permissions on this folder. Everybody else has no permissions whatsoever, and that is key. If you don't have those permissions set up right, you can't use SSH to get into servers and stuff. So if I go into here and I do an LA, I can see again there's these public keys, and they make them readable. I normally even just shut off that, so I could do a chmod. Let's see here, 600 ID ED255. So this is hex 6, so that'd be the bits 4, the bit 2, and bit 0 off. So read write with execute off, and then 0 0 for the rest of that. And now if we look at it, all right, so now we just have read write, and here's your public key. So this is the public key is what you'd normally upload to GitHub or GitLab. And we're gonna say, if we look at that, here's my public key that was just generated, and it's much shorter. If you ever seen an RSA key, it's gonna be multiple lines long that you get a copy and stuff, and this is just as secure. So what we're gonna do now is if I just basically type cd and go back here, and if I type ssh add this and then a -L, this will list all of the SS keys that are loaded into my SSH agent. And if we hit enter, we can notice, hey, you don't even have your agent. It's not even running and stuff. And so you can go through the whole process of setting your agent up and setting up a script on startup to load your keys and do all that kind of stuff. But this is where the power of Oh My ZSH comes in. We basically can edit our .zshrc file, and we can come down here and we can add our first plugin. So this is one that I pretty much always add almost immediately, and you add them by just doing spaces between. So the one I'm looking for is SSH agent, and if I type SSH agent and I hit save, and I can either exit my terminal or I can just type source.zshrc to reload that file, and I hit enter, and you can see, boom, it's starting my SSH agent and it loaded my identity in there. And now if I type SSH add -L, you can see, boom, it's got my key loaded. And that is something that a lot of people unfamiliar with Linux forget, and they inevitably have problems when they try to get checkout and get load stuff and do all that. So yeah, that's one of the big keys there. We're gonna install another one, so I'm just gonna come here and go like Oh My ZSH and look at the plugins list, and you can see there's 1Password plugins, there's different stuff depending on what you're doing, lots and lots of plugins. You can kind of look through all these, and I think if you click on them, you can kind of see a little bit what they do. So this would be Ruby gem, and a lot of stuff. The one we're looking for right now, so there's like a node one that basically I think adds it adds node docs functionality. So you can type node docs fs and probably see, looks like it opens up a page directly for you. What I'm gonna do though is go down to one that I really like called PJ, and this stands for Project Jump, and it allows you to define several folders where you store your projects, and you can jump there and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, let's start creating where we're going to check out code. So maybe we're in our root folder here in our home folder, and let's say we have a directory called projects, and inside our projects we might have make a directory for client, A, if you're doing projects for clients, and then make a directory for my personal projects. And if we go into client A, like let's make a directory that is going to be our like front end, and make a directory back end, and you can obviously go and put files in there, and I'll make a personal one, and I'll make a directory called like cat website, right? And so if I go up here and if I do a find, you can see here's my folder structure. I got front end, back end, client A, personal, that kind of stuff. And so now we've got that folder structure set up. If I come back here and do a nano of my ZSHRC file, and if I add this plugin here called PJ, and now we're going to have to configure it just a little bit. If you look down here, you add the PJ in there, and then we add this environment variable called project paths. And if we come here, I can paste this thing in, and so I'm gonna have this be project, and it doesn't recursive go down it, but so we'll say client A, and we'll say project / personal, and that's it. So I'll do that one. I'll save this file. I'll source the file. And now I can type PJ, and I can type, front end. Let's see here. Oh, client back end. Maybe I messed up there. Yes, so I messed up. I said project instead of projects. You got to get that right. And if I source that again and do PJ front end, you can see it auto completes, and I hit enter and it just jumps me right there. I can say PJ cat website and it jumps me right there. So instead of having to navigate all around, that is a nice little extension. The next thing I like to set up is Node Version Manager. This allows us to easily switch different node versions between it. So we're going to do install nvm Ubuntu, and we'll come here, we'll come to the Node Version Manager, and we'll come down to the install and blindly copy the script. It's safe. Trust us. And we install that. Now, the main thing here is that it's appending this stuff onto your ZSHRC file. If it didn't, then you need to manually copy that, but it should have. It says it was. And we also need to kind of restart our terminal now to use it. You don't really have to. You can just source that same file. So, but just to make sure, we're gonna cat our, well, we're gonna go back to our home folder. And we're gonna cat concatenate. It was what that stands for. ZSHRC. And we can see right there at the bottom, it's created some of the stuff. It's gonna run all that stuff. So I'm gonna say source my ZSHRC. And now I should be able to type nvm, and I'm going to say nvm install --lts, and that should install the very latest long-term stable node version. And in this case, it installed node v20 12.2, and it also set the default to this one. So if I type node-v, I can see it's got version 20. If I actually close this and open it up, this is a good test to do. If I come back here, if I type node-v, it is version 20. So that, in a nutshell, is basically the main things that you'd want to do to kind of get up a system up and running with Ubuntu. It has obviously a lot of capability. It basically brings the power of Linux and open source into Windows. And you can do so many other things. I've gotten successfully Android Studio to work and run in here, compiling and building all of that to an Android device. There are tools to be able to connect USB devices into here. Just a quick primer on that. That would be USB, I think it's IPD, WSL. And there's a good article on how to do this, and this is the project that you'd do. You'd run here and install the latest thing, and then you'd come back to the PowerShell, and you'd say USB IPD, and I think, let's see, -help. You'd say WSL -L for list. Oh, just list. And so this will list all of your USB devices. So if, for example, you wanted your webcam to go there, you'd say USB attach 1-5, and it would basically unmount it from Windows and then mount it into Linux, and then you can have access to that. So obviously when you're doing like phone programming and stuff, and you want it to be able to program directly from your WSL Ubuntu instance, that's how you'd attach that there. Anyways, just lots of power, lots of stuff you can do there. Accessing files real quick. You would access, if you're in Windows and you're wanting to get access to your Ubuntu files, you would come up here and you'd type // WSL $, and now you show your two instances here. So if I come into here, I have full access and control over that. Here's my projects with my cat folder, and you can view all this kind of stuff right here. If you were in Linux and wanted to see the files there, you would go to cd/mount, and then you can see in there that it has your different drives for your hard drives. And so I'd say C drive, and then I can go into users and see the different users in there. So that's how you kind of access those different files. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully this was helpful. Thanks.